Hello and welcome to exfidebibles. My name is Ethan. So on today's video, I'm going to be doing something a little bit interesting here. So I have a customer who is getting a Schuyler Bible, rebound by me, here in March. So he is this gentleman named Stan. He's a rebinder. He's starting starting to learn how to rebind, and I think he's two to three Bibles in at this point. So he sent me this Schuyler Quentel to rebind, and one of the things he requested was for me to record me taking off the cover so that he can get an idea of how Royal Youngblood constructs Schuyler Bibles, which I think that's cool. That's something that I would be interested in seeing if I was a newer rebinder as well. So that's the plan for today. So this is a Schuyler Quentel that I'm going to be removing the cover of. And obviously I'm going to be rebinding it as well, but today we're just going to be, taking the cover off. So, it's a crazy sound. He did request that I send the box back to him, which I will be sure to do. And so we'll actually kind of get two case examples of how Youngblood constructs their covers, because I actually took the cover off of my Crossway Omega today. I'm doing a retread of this Bible, which means that I'm taking off the goat skin cover and then putting a new text block in it, and then I'm planning on most likely reselling it, but I might keep it. I'm not exactly sure. But anyway, I took this cover off today, and we can kind of get a look at this was a Youngblood cover, and obviously Schuyler uses Youngblood as well. So we can kind of see kind of a two case example of how they construct their covers. So let's go ahead and get started here. So I've done this on a number of Bibles. I've done retreads before, which, if you don't know the lingo, a retread is just when you take, like I said before, take the cover off of the Bible, maintain its integrity, like you're not taking a knife to anything really, and then putting a new text block in it. So that's what we're going to be doing today. I'm going to be taking this cover off of this text block while doing my best, not to scratch the gilding or cut the liner of the Bible at all or anything like that. I'm going to do it, with the least amount of damage as I possibly can do. So I'm not really going to be using like a knife or anything like that. So let's get started here. So the plan is essentially to take off this end sheet here on both sides and then peel the tab off of the text block. So I'm going to go ahead and do that here. All right. All right. So the easiest way to do this, I found, is actually, I'd like to keep the presentation page as pristine as I can. So obviously the end sheet is going to be replaced by me. So what I want to do is essentially just peel up this end sheet to reveal, how the tab is attached to the block. So I'm going to go to do that. So the reason why I don't want to just take this end sheet and just peel it back is because I really want to try to maintain this paper, if at all possible. Sometimes when you peel the vinyl end sheet up, it will just take away too much of this, and then I'll have to, stitch in a signature of cardstock, which is, obviously I know how to do that, but I would like to avoid that if I can, because that's just extra work. So let's see here. This is just like a little prying tool. I think this tool is originally for like clay sculpting, and it has a nice blunt blunt tip on it that I use for kind of like a letter opener type thing. So man, this is really on there. So this is not coming up as easily as I want it to. So I'll probably if you're not a rebinder and you love Schuyler Bibles, look away. I mean, I love Schuyler Bibles. They make pretty good stuff. Although I will say, their corners, I mean, I'm not saying that I make a Bible as good as Schuyler, but my corners, the best corners I've done look a lot better than this one. So definitely, they definitely have the corner on great Bibles, though. I love Schuyler Bibles. You know what? I'm just going to gently peel this off. There we go. Yeah, it's coming up pretty easy. Happy with that. So if you were doing a retread, you would want to be really careful. Obviously, I'm not planning on putting this cover on anything. But if you're doing a retread, you want to be really careful not to damage the tab at all. So that's something you got to be aware of. See? Actually, no, that's not. Never mind. I was about to say, like, see, that's what you want to avoid, but that's actually not leather. That's interesting. Okay. Let's flip this around and get this guy back out. Because I want to pull this cover off. I want to pull the tab off so that we can see how what Schuyler uses for like their Oxford Hollow and stuff like that. Because that's good information to know. Okay. That's good. Okay. That's good. So now, all right. So here's the tab. Okay. So yeah, here's the tab. So a couple observations that I think is pretty interesting. So trying to get a close up here. So they use an Oxford Hollow. I can tell that obviously. And they do the same thing they did the same thing on the Omega. They actually don't use a craft paper Oxford Hollow. They use a book cloth, kind of like a vinyl book cloth Oxford Hollow, which I think is interesting. And I'll get a close up of that. And another thing I think is interesting here, just for the rebinders out there, is that, so this is the liner right here. This is the liner, and this is extra reinforcement that they add. So this will be easier, hopefully, to show once I fully remove the, actually, this is a good way to do it. So obviously when you're doing this, if you ever do this, you want to be really careful, like around the edges of the Bible where the gilding is. Like you don't want to put a nail mark in the gilding if you can help it. So I'm actually just peeling the Oxford Hollow off of the cover here. So actually really happy with how I was able to do that. So for the back here, I'm just gonna, they actually have a lot of cardstock back here, so I'm not super concerned about, maintaining a single piece because they have plenty back here. So, so here you can see it. So this is interesting. This is what I was talking about. So underneath their Oxford Hollow, they have a strip of, it's not, book cloth, what's this called? Book reinforcement, or, super cloth or cheesecloth or whatever. So Youngblood, they add a vinyl, it's the same material that they use for their Oxford Hollow. They have a strip of that's pasted onto the block underneath the Oxford Hollow that creates like this flap right here. And that flap is then glued. So this flap is like I think glued down. Let's check on this side. Oh yeah, okay. I see what they're doing here. So this is a piece of like vinyl book cloth that they paste down onto the block underneath the Oxford Hollow, and they wrap it around the block, and then the tab then gets glued on top of that reinforcement. So I do something similar, but with this type of material. Under the Oxford Hollow, I'll have that reinforcement pasted over, over the block. It's under the ribbons, under the headbands, under the Oxford Hollow, under everything, and then I'll glue it here. But what they do is they use more of like a fabric type material, because interestingly, if you have a situation like this where your end sheet fully pulls away from your block, this is still solid right here. This cover is not gonna come off even if this is fully pulled up, because that reinforcement is glued to the tab. The adhesion of that reinforcement to the tab is stronger than the adhesion of this paper on paper. So if you were to pull up this paper, you wouldn't immediately reveal the tab. You would reveal like the tab that is combined with that reinforcement. Hopefully that makes sense. It makes sense in my brain, what they're doing here. So let's see. Look away. Okay. It's good to remember. It's always whenever I'm doing this, I'm always like reminding myself like this. While this is a gorgeous Bible, what it really is important are the words that it contains. And if this gentleman Stan gets a lot of really good use out of this Bible and enjoys it more because it doesn't have, someone else's initials on the front, that's fine by me. All right. So, let's see. All right. So this is the material that I was talking about, that they use for their Oxford Hollow. So this is not paper. It's more so book cloth, which I think is interesting. So I've seen this same type of material is used for the hollows on this older Omega cover. Obviously I don't have it because I threw it away, but This is like a really interesting material. This is very strong. I mean, it's like fabric with some kind of vinyl covering on it, kind of like book cloth. I mean, it tears a lot. It tears a lot. You know, a paper Oxford Hollow would have a lot less strength than this for sure, which is interesting. And I've seen some guys on the Bible Rebinder support group use vinyl or use book cloth for their Oxford Hollow. And I might start experimenting with that too. So if you're wondering, you know, how an Oxford Hollow works, right? This is glued together like this, and it leaves a hollow. Obviously this flap is glued to this first panel here, but it leaves a hollow. I mean, it's literally a hollow tube. One side is glued to the block, and the other side is glued to the cover. And it essentially, all along here, it gives extra strength to the block and keeps the block kind of pulled to the cover. So that's why I use them. So yeah, so this is that reinforcement stuff that I was talking about, which means like this block is going to be really easy to clean up because I can just rip all that off. There we go. Still need to, yeah, that's going to be difficult to take off, but we'll see. I'm not going to do the full like cleanup on this block. In this video, this is just to show how Schuyler Bibles are constructed, put together. Obviously, I'm going to be removing this as much as I possibly can. But yeah, this is what a Schuyler looks like without a cover. So pretty interesting. A lot more floppy because it doesn't have any reinforcement. Like imagine if you could have a Bible with no reinforcement and still that would be wild looking. So obviously I'm trying really hard not to scratch the gilding on this. So, all right. So the next thing I wanted to talk about, and I saw this, Youngblood did this on this older cover too. So one of the things you'll see here that's interesting. This guy wanted me to send him these ribbons. So I'm going to make sure to keep those. So one of the things you'll see here that's interesting is that there's nothing really backing their hubs, but they're solid. And that's because they do it the same way between these two covers. So their hubs are kind of just indentations behind the spine, which is kind of odd because the way rebinders like myself that do this by hand, I like line my hubs with leather twine. So the way I make my hubs is, obviously before I adhere pieces of twine to my leather, and then on the other side tool it down so that it kind of with glue and all that, and make sure it's nice and straight, nice and consistent. But Youngblood doesn't do that on Schuyler Bibles or Crossway Premium Bibles, which I think is kind of interesting. I'm not sure how they get these really solid feeling hubs without. I mean, this is really rigid right here. So they must like somehow have a machine that creates that with heat, maybe? I don't know. I couldn't tell you. So pretty interesting. I will say that it looks like their liner cowhide is probably, my guess is about 0.8 millimeters, 0.7 to 0.8 millimeters is my guess, which is the same, ideal thickness that I use for my liners. This is that looks like that's a little bit, this is a little bit thinner, maybe closer to 0.7, but yeah, so that is how a Schuyler Bible is constructed, and that's how you take off a cover if you ever want to do a retread, or anything like that. So yeah, pretty happy with how that went. So yeah, in terms of Schuyler Bibles, I've been pretty impressed with how they're constructed. Kind of the one aesthetic pet peeve that just really bothers me about their full yap Bibles is that they don't connect. They don't connect this tool line right here, which just drives me nuts for some reason. Like when I look at the Bible kind of like from this 3/4 angle, I see this like nice tool line along where the block falls, and then it just stops awkwardly, and then it just restarts on the other side. I don't know. It's just, that bothers me a lot for some reason. It bothers me way more than it should. I was around, Premium Bibles when Schuyler started, and when they were still doing the full size Quentels, and then the thin line Quentels. I was around when I was into Premium Bibles when they were starting to do that, and I saw that they were announcing like a full yap Bible. I was like, that's really cool. And then like they did this, and I'm like, that aesthetic choice just for some reason infuriates me. But yeah, interesting. So this is how you take off the cover of a Schuyler Bible. Hope you enjoyed it. I hope you thought it was interesting. Thank you for watching. This is Ethan from exfidebibles.
Bibles.